My name is Angela Murjani, and I'm sure that by the end of this lesson you are going to know a lot more about this poem and the poet who has written it, whose name is Dylan Thomas. Now, this particular poem is one of Dylan Thomas's most popular poems, and this is because he has dealt with the universal themes of grief and death in this poem. He also talks about the deep pain and sorrow that one feels when one is experiencing the imminent death of a loved one. Confronting the reality of that impending death is not easy, and this is one of the main reasons that this poem has been so popular with people through the years, because the emotion is not new. The emotion is not alien. People all over the world of whatever age, whatever economic strata, whatever social level will at some point in their lives experience death. And so when Dylan Thomas talks about this death that's going to happen to his father, we can relate so well to him at every level of his emotional turmoil. During the course of this poem, he talks about many other kinds of men, different from his father: wise men, good men, grave men, men who have made an impact upon this earth through the things that they did, men who have been acknowledged by society. But in spite of the impact that they made, and in spite of their own personal struggles with death, there came a time when they had to succumb to this same death. It kind of shows us that the rules of this universe, the laws that govern this universe, are unrelenting, and they apply to everybody, and everybody must go through them. It shows us how small and how insignificant human beings are when compared to the expansiveness and the extent of this whole universe and the laws that govern it. Ultimately, the poet makes an urgent appeal to his father. Through this poem, he's trying to tell his father not to give in to death, not to succumb to it, but to fight against it and to battle it with every last fiber of his being, every last iota of strength that he has. But in a sense, this is a paradox, because while urging his father to fight death, he also talks about how all the other men who did fight death had to give in at some stage or the other. Here in this poem, Dylan Thomas is comparing the span of a life to the length of a day. And then, as a corollary to that, he compares death to the coming of night. So when he urges his father strongly at the end of this poem, rage against the coming of the night, what he's trying to say is, Father, with everything that you have, try to keep death off. Try to stave death away for some more time. Dylan Thomas, the son of a professor of English, was born in 1914 in Wales. He grew up hearing his father recite Shakespeare to him, and from there was born a passion for the rhythms of English poetry. He dropped out of school at the age of 16 to become a junior reporter for the South Wales Daily Post. By December of 1932, he left his job at the Post and decided to concentrate on his poetry full-time. It was during this time, in his late teens, that Thomas wrote more than half of his collected poems. Dylan Thomas wrote prolifically from a very young age. In fact, his first poems were published in his school magazine. So if you've been writing for your school magazine or your college journal, there is hope for you. One day you might be a famous poet just like Dylan Thomas. In 1934, when Thomas was 20, he moved to London. Here, he won the Poets' Corner Book Prize and published his first book, which was called 18 Poems, and this was published to great acclaim. The book drew from a collection of poetry notebooks that Thomas had written years earlier, as would many of his most popular poems and books that were published later. Sadly though, it was during this period of his greatest success that Thomas also began the habit of alcohol abuse. While his contemporaries T.S. Eliot and W.H.